You don't understand Superman. That is the common attack against those who are critical of James Gunn's interpretation of Superman within the new James Gunn Superman movie. And while this attack is now coming very much more common, the question is whether or not it is true. After all, I've already made a video talking about the criticisms that these people have with this version of Superman, and I was very much not necessarily on their side, but I understood their criticisms, and I think that they should watch the movie first. At least that's what I thought at the time. These attacks, both from both sides of these fandoms, have started to come bigger recently with the reveal of this new clip.
It's fine, Heather. Superman, we finally meet. Would you like a coffee?
Where's the dog?
Dog?
The dog, Luther! You took the dog!
That's right, you get all of this.
Where's the dog?
I have no clue what you're talking about.
He's just a dog.
Now, I would submit that that is not Superman. Why is that not Superman, though? Again, a lot of the people who are critical of those who are themselves critical of James Gunn's interpretation of Superman would say that, well, I understand that Superman has emotions. Superman has emotions. In this scene, as is pretty clearly shown, Lex Luthor stole his dog. How would you react if Superman stole your dog? That's just Superman having emotions. Or some people would say stuff as is, perhaps maybe Superman may not have let his emotions, control him, may have let his emotions control him in a way he shouldn't have, but he's young and he'll grow from that. And I think that both of these miss one of the key parts of Superman's character, which is, to put it quite simply, Superman is supposed to be a paragon of virtue. Now, what does that mean? That means that he's supposed to be incredibly, incredibly good. He's not someone that you grow into necessarily. He is a ideal standard of goodness, an never changing North Star of goodness that is, makes all the other heroes want to aspire to be. And because of this, it makes it very clear that he can't have moments like this, because two of the biggest parts of Superman's character that make him different than other paragons of virtue is his overwhelming power and his overwhelming goodness. See, most paragons of virtue have this overwhelming goodness to them, but they don't have the overwhelming power that Superman has. And the reasons why that's so very important, because those are the parts that people focus on when it comes to his character. You see, Superman has this overwhelming power. He is the most powerful person on the planet. He is basically a god to most people when it comes to the level of power he can possess and the level of power he can show. But it is his goodness that makes him still good. With that level of power, without that level of goodness, you see the impact would be someone like Homelander, Omni-Man, all the other characters who have a lot of power, but they're not that good. And his goodness without that power would make him more like Captain America, which wouldn't be a bad thing necessarily, but it wouldn't be the same. So when you have someone with that level of power, that level of goodness, again, is necessary. And with that level of goodness, that level of heart, level of greatness, comes a level of discipline, because he has that amount of power. He must be, at the same time, incredibly disciplined with his emotions. It's the same idea if you saw someone with a gun, someone with power, a gun, and they're shaking and they're emotional and they're, yelling here and there. You wouldn't be very happy with that. Why? Because you understand that with that level of power, they're supposed to have a new level of restraint with that power. So what you see here is that Superman is acting without restraint. He is just yelling, he is throwing things around, he is very erratic. And while being erratic without having a certain level of strength, with that level of strength that he has, it makes it very scary. But at the same time, it shows why he's not Superman. He might be invincible. A character like Invincible does exist, and there are characters who aren't paragons of virtue. There are everyman characters. Spider-Man's a very similar character. Everyman characters that, are supposed to be just like us, but Superman's not supposed to be just like us. If he was just like us, then he would just be called man. He's supposed to be a Superman. He was supposed to be above us in almost every single way. He's supposed to be the best versions of us. So I think that's one of the bigger differences people keep on not understanding. I mean, I remember talking to acquaintance of mine, and they were saying that, well, John Wick started his entire story off of a dog, that a dog being hurt or dog being killed in this case, that started off John Wick's entire story. Why weren't you mad about that? And I explained to him that because John Wick isn't Superman. He's not the same character. John Wick is a anti-hero. So when he goes crazy over a dog and starts taking out these Russian mobsters, that makes sense. You gotta remember that John Wick was called Baba Yaga. He was a mob hitman for years. He is not a morally good character. So in comparison, Superman's supposed to not just be a morally good character. He's supposed to be morally the best character. That's what a paragon of virtue means. So when you see him degraded to the point where he is, yelling and screaming over, his dog, which again is understandable. It's something that you understand. It's a very human experience. Don't get me wrong, but it's not what Superman's supposed to do. That's what a man is supposed to do. That's what a regular person, that's what a Spider-Man, someone who's normal might do that. But Superman is held to a higher standard because of the power that he possesses, because of the goodness he's supposed to have. That is what he is. He is the higher standard, not held to one. He is that higher standard. That's what he's supposed to be. So he has to be more restrained with his emotions. And again, this version showed he's not going to be restrained with his emotions. But there is the other option, of course, that people keep on talking about. They keep saying, well, maybe he's not restrained right now. He's unrestrained at this moment, but later on he's going to learn his lesson. Maybe this is a scene that shows how, he's going to learn his lesson and be a better person in the future. I think that's wrong. Now, again, you can't say this without watching the entire movie, or at least you can't say this to be a fact until you watch the entire movie. That said, there's a major issue that you see throughout the trailers. And the major issue seems to be that Lex Luthor is very convinced that Superman is not human when it comes to the basics of his humanity, while the rest of the trailer tries to make it that Superman is incredibly human, and what makes him human is his emotions, his unrestrained emotions, more specifically. There's not the fact that he has discipline over his emotions and that he's the best of everything, he's the best of us. He's more like he's just like us. So they switched Superman from being a paragon of virtue to being an everyman superhero, which I understand is not a Superman. He would be called, again, man. That makes perfect sense. He could be invincible. He could be any of the other people who are Superman-like copies who have all his power but none of his goodness, or very little of his goodness. But this is supposed to be Superman. It's supposed to be the greatest hero the world has ever seen. He's supposed to be like All Might. He's supposed to be like Captain America, and those type of characters would never do this. That's a great example. I think you should put in there. You should think about how Captain America would have reacted in the same situation. He might have said similar words, but his tone would have been different. His tone wouldn't have been unrestrained. It would have been unrestricted at the time. He would have a certain amount of gravitas to him. That's what Superman lacks in this scene. He lacks gravitas. He lacks, again, ability to control his emotions. He doesn't have that within this version of his character. And instead of this being a character flaw, it's gonna be portrayed based on the promotional material as a character good. It's supposed to be portrayed as a character trait that is actually something to be lauded, something to be praised. And that shows why, again, James Gunn, for a lot of these people, don't understand Superman. And I would now put myself among their ranks. I don't think that James Gunn understands the way that Superman is supposed to be. I think he struggles to write paragon of virtue type characters, and instead he decided to turn Superman to a character type that he's very good at writing, which is everyman type characters, guys who are, understandable. You understand what they're going through. They're not meant to be held to a higher standard. They're not meant to be, these characters that you really look up to as these, powerful legends, as these divine legends, so to speak. But they're guys who are just like average, they're average everyday guys. And again, that might be your type of superhero. I think because of this, that Superman, this new movie, is actually not gonna necessarily flop. I think it's gonna be just very controversial, because I think that some people who really like that everyman type character type, and they don't really understand the way a Superman's supposed to work as a paragon of virtue, those people are going to be very happy. They're going to say he's so relatable, that we really like the way he's relatable now. I really feel like I could be Superman. And that's going to really make them love that movie, right? But the people who wanted Superman to be a paragon of virtue, they wanted him to be All Might, they wanted him to be Captain America, the people who want him to be this super powerful figure who's also incredibly good and restrained and is basically the perfect man, the Sir Galahad, the knight of shining armor type superman and superhero, those people are going to be very disappointed. So I think that's what it is. I think it's going to be some people who are going to be incredibly disappointed with the movie and some people who are going to be incredibly happy with the movie. And I will consider myself among the first group, because ultimately speaking, I wanted to see a paragon of virtue. This Superman is what I wanted to see. Man of Steel Superman was not a paragon of virtue yet. He was someone who was seen to be growing into that. You could see the beginnings of that perhaps, but he was not there yet, and it was unfortunate to see him never reach that. And I think that this new Superman version is perfect. Again, people got mad at David Cornsweet, the actor of Superman. They don't think he can act properly like Superman, that he was miscast. And they're correct and not correct at the same time. He is miscast if you want to be a paragon of virtue type version of Superman, but if you wanted him to be the more human, the more everyman Superman, then he was perfectly cast for that. He is very much the everyman in the way that he's portraying the character. He's portraying the character perfectly, which is what James Gunn wanted to portray. And again, that's just unfortunate. Now, again, whether or not this is actually supposed to be Superman, whether or not Superman's a paragon of virtue or everyman, that's a debate to be had. I think it's very clear that Superman is meant to be a paragon of virtue, the man of tomorrow. He's meant to be greater, the best of humanity, rather than being just one of the guys. Because, there's a lot of bad things about humanity that can be done there. I remember seeing this, and I saw the video on Twitter. I saw a video beforehand, a little meme beforehand, where this guy, did a terrible thing. He went off and he did some type of revenge trail where he took out someone who did him very dirty, right? And the top comment under the video, or this little picture, was saying that, hey, while I don't condone what he did, I understand it. And that's the type of superhero that James Gunn creates. James Gunn creates superheroes that you don't necessarily love necessarily. By that I mean, like, you can't condone their actions, but you understand their actions. And again, that's just not Superman. So I would say this is a bad thing in the long run, but that's just for me. What do you guys think? Like and subscribe for the content, and I'll see you guys in the next Black Tiger Quick Talk.